Surendra Kumar, members of the panel, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to be here and to be a part of this discussion on an issue of which I have been concerned, believe it or not, since I first went to Washington as a schoolboy in 1941, which makes it, 72 years now. And I've seen a lot of ups and downs. I'm not sure what I'm witnessing today. What I'm witnessing in this room makes me first of all want to express my profound thanks, and I'm sure of all of us, including the organizers, that you've taken the trouble to come. We owe you, as I say, a debt of gratitude and also of admiration that you should persist in an interest in a subject in which it seems a good deal of Delhi seems to have lost, because there is a series of other functions going on at this time. But it also shows how small the community of international affairs in India is. I don't know how many people really bother about a thing, about India's involvement in the world, unless something titillating is happening. Then, of course, everybody jumps on the bandwagon. So it is not just that there are other distractions, but I have to say that one of the greatest difficulties of anyone wanting to further India's relations with the outside world is the very small number of people who really care about it. So we thank you for your caring. As far as the subject is concerned, we have such a distinguished and knowledgeable panel. I will leave it to them to explain to you what is the reality of our relationships. I would only like to submit to you. Let's not look at things in terms of the moment only. In my 71-year perspective, as I say, I very often doubted whether the relationship would be as good as it is today. Our relations were in fact shaped to a very large extent by two coincidences. The first is that when United States became independent, India lost its independence. I'm talking of the 18th century. And the second is that when America became the major player on the world, it coincided with India's emerging as a would-be player on the world stage. The first coincidence meant that we really knew nothing at all about each other. The Americans saw India largely through the eyes of British writers, Kipling and the like. And we, if we saw America at all, was also, believe it or not, we don't realize this, very largely shaped by British attitudes, which were condescending and suspicious, especially of the British socialists who were our best friends at that time. So that we started our careers as interactors. As I say, when America became the major player and we just started to look at the world, and our interests and priorities were worlds apart. That initial sense of difference and distance has not entirely been overcome. I think in the Indian intellectual climate it is fairly fair to say that while it is no longer considered unpatriotic to think well of the United States, there is no particular affection for it, which is good. We shouldn't have emotions guide these things, but there is no, frankly, understanding and a continuing suspicion. And yet in the last few years, about a decade ago, it seemed as though the past was gone and new things were happening, and everybody became excited whether they liked the nuclear deal or not. It seemed to herald a new relationship. That has not matured. The fact of the matter is that since then both our countries have been deeply engaged in such enormous domestic problems and preoccupations that the relationship has not had any very great priority, nor does it need to. Let us not forget that this is the normal state of relations between countries. I mean, we don't talk about what's happening in France-India relations or Japan-India relations. We take things as going on. The fact of the matter is that all states carry on and trying to build up a relationship, but also having enormous differences. And that is the situation for us in Indo-American relations. I would not worry about them at all, except for one thing. I don't think they have reached the level of maturity or solidity where they can be taken for granted, and therefore nurturing them, or at least managing them, is still a very important issue. And our Prime Minister's visit was really a part of that continuing nurturing. What it actually signifies in the various fields and what is the state of our relationship at this moment will now be explained to you far more succinctly and far more profoundly than I can by our panelists. So I now call upon them. We were supposed to start with Professor Vijayalakshmi. Since she is delayed in her traffic, I ask Dr. Gokaran please to start.